Welcome back, everyone, to Finding Rachel, a podcast about a film, about a YouTube channel. You got it? Okay, so I don't know. How many months has it been? It's been too long since I recorded my last podcast. I've been a little bit busy making the film, cutting the film, promoting the film, selling the film, distributing film, all that kind of stuff. Getting crap about the film. Lots of fun stuff. Anyway, today something a little bit different. I'm turning to one of the collaborators on the film, Doug Tewksbury. He's an interdisciplinary media artist and a curator whose practice spans interactive media, sound, electronics, photo, video, field recordings, and other media. His ongoing body of creative work in recent years is focused on environmental themes, humans' relationship to the natural world, and the climate crisis in particular. So, Doug is joining me today to talk about the process of making and scoring music, making original soundtrack for the documentary, The TV Show. Let's get right to it. Welcome, Doug. So glad that you could make it. How long has it been? It's been like 6 weeks since 8 weeks
Yeah, a few
since
weeks.
I feel like the whole process of making music for the film just kind of ended. And I feel like you and I just kind of ran off in different directions and we didn't get a chance to debrief, did we? So
Yeah. Well, and I mean it's, a lot of making anything creative when you have like a team of folks working on things is like I'm gonna put you in a corner until you're needed, and then when you're needed, it's gonna be very intense for a couple weeks, and then it's been 6 or 8 weeks and feels strange after 2 or 3 weeks of pretty constant collaboration.
I feel like you were going to pull out some kind of sports metaphor there, coming off the bench, and it's kind of like, oh, you didn't do so well. Back to the bench. But that
What
is
are
not the way it
sports?
went. That is not the way it went. Anyway, so what are you up to these days? Before we get into talking about your role in composing the original music for the documentary film, I just want folks to kind of get to know you a little bit more. I know that, well, people have heard my introduction, but you've been doing a lot of things this fall, working on various projects. You want to just tell the audience a little bit about what you've been doing lately, the last few months?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, my background is as a musician and playing in bands and playing live and recording and things like that. And I still do that. I still do that as well. But much of the last, 6 or 7 years, my work is moving more in terms of looking at galleries and museums. I've been doing a lot of work in the fine arts, especially around sound installations, sound and video installations, sound and light installations, and doing a lot of multimedia collaborative things with other artists as well. It's been a blast. Like I'm still enjoying it a lot. I've been doing a lot of work with the Art Gallery of Hamilton here where I live in Hamilton, Ontario, with some museums in Western New York and the region. And yeah, so a lot of the work that I've been doing the last few months was gallery-based work. I had a project I was going to be working
Like
on.
installations, do you mean?
Yeah, doing with installations and like performance installations too, especially collaborative things. Uh, the world has gotten to be a little bit of a darker place in recent years, and as
I noticed too.
yeah, yeah, you may have
I
noticed, but like,
noticed.
as I've been thinking about like what are the things I have control over and what don't I have control over, this part of just my own processing. One of the things I found really rewarding is bringing people together and building community through creativity. So a lot of the work that I've been doing the last 6 to 9 months is performance installations where people participate in the performance and we bring people together to make something, professionals and non-professionals, just to be a reminder that, anybody can be an artist and anybody can create and we can make nice things together and have
Hmm.
moments of wonder and beauty and joy. And yeah, it's a new path for me, but I've really enjoyed it. And I think I'm going to just keep going this direction for a little
Yeah.
while.
Well, that's a good place to start because I feel like you and I have been having these mini conversations or over a drink here, over a get together at a scholarly event there, via email, of course, and I think how how long have we been doing this? Just kind of talking about we should do something together. We should collaborate. Because
At least a couple of years, yeah.
I think it goes back to, I think it's further than that. I think it goes back to when you invited me to show my last film, The Canadian Delegation, down
Hmm.
at Niagara University. Do you remember that? So that was 2000,
Oh, it was a highlight. It was a highlight of the year for my students in
2000.
particular. No,
Wow.
seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, those of you at home can't see Doug's face, and he has a straight face on. Yeah. No, you
Well,
had wonderful
and
students.
yeah, and let me just say real quick. I mean, one of the things when I'm teaching film courses, especially something like I teach a documentary film course, like a lot of the movies that we watch are unattainable to the students in the classroom. These are multi-million dollar productions or just so not able to be done. And so getting to meet with
Mm.
someone who's made their own documentary and is like, oh, this can be done. It was very empowering. And the students all talked about that of like, this is like just somebody who wants to make a piece of art to put out into the world and was able to make it happen. And it's very empowering for them that they get to do that. And those are
They
the
were they
cool
were
those are the cool experiences, as a
They
professor.
they were they were jazz for sure. I think we went out for a drink or a nibble, and I was surprised a few people came along. Anyway, so yeah, so thanks for that invite. But anyway, just to kind of rewind, I think that was the first time that we got to kind of chat and realize that we weren't just eggheads anymore. We weren't just scholarly nerds. We were both, I think, starting to move into artistic ways, and so I think what was it about? I think it was right. So that was right before. I feel like this is kind of a COVID story. That was that was the start of the COVID, right? Or just before COVID when I came down there.
Yeah, 2019 or so.
And then the end of COVID was when you came to Toronto and had a live show. Do you remember down
Yeah,
near Queen Street?
down on Ossington
And
somewhere.
I feel like we reconnected there. So it's a bit of a bookend COVID collaboration chat if I'm not stretching too much. And I think at the end of COVID, you and I started to get a little bit more serious. We were like, no, no, we really should do something. We really should do something. And I think it was soon thereafter that I kind of put you on my not Rolodex. What would you call that? My timer. It's kind of like when can I really start to tell Doug this project is really going to be off the ground? Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, it was nice when we started talking a little bit more about this project because it sounded so curious. I mean, I think the pitch of this project of the TV show where it's a character study documentary around somebody that is a bundle of contradictions and a
Yeah.
community that's a bundle of contradictions, and that always makes for an interesting story.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, so I kind of threw that hook out there and kind of had Doug on the hook, and I slowly kind of started to pull him in and slowly started to pitch him on this project, and I think you were pretty enthusiastic from the beginning. But it was your first, like this is only my what, third or fourth film this, and so this is the first time that you've done a score for a film, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And I
Yeah.
mean, one of the challenge of doing something new and learning how to do something new was a big part of the appeal of this. I've done it, it's a little bit of a natural, in some ways, progression of, I've been working with a lot of video artists and doing like sound design and scoring for museum and gallery works, especially around video. And it's been a lot of fun. And so, doing something like this is not exactly the same. It's much more, I get a creative say, but it's much more work for hire
Hmm.
in a good way and like
Yeah.
scoring something that's longer too. I mean, it's a story, it's a film, it's 33 minutes, not 6 minutes. And the venue is, the music serves a different purpose,
Yeah.
unlike much fine art gallery museum work where the music is a little more present and forward than it is with something like this. It's a very talky film. The words are forward and
Hmm.
the story's
Hmm.
forward. It was a fun challenge. I liked it.
Yeah, well, let's get into the process a little bit so people have a sense as to how we work together, and then maybe we can reflect on parts that were helpful, engaging, frustrating, all that kind of stuff. Um, but I think that part of the our process was for me hindered a little bit because more than a little bit because we were working at a distance, right? I think that I'm in France now. You're in Hamilton in Canada, in Ontario. And I feel like how many times do we actually get to sit face to face and be like, okay, let's start to hammer out what this is going to look like? Did we ever
Zero.
do that? I feel like you came to Toronto and we went out to we you came out and I took you to this weird bar and the music was really loud. And I think that we were kind of assaulted by some bad music and some half decent food and drinks. But we never really got to kind of be like, this is how do you want to work together or what kind of movie is this going to be or what kind of sound are you looking for, Greg? I feel like the first time we actually started to do the work was like this at a distance. Is that your recollection too?
Yeah, it is. And I
Okay.
think that one of the things, I mean, it had its challenges, but it wasn't overly challenging. I mean, we're 6 hours apart. That
Yeah.
requires a little more like go away and work on something, send it me, we'll talk about it in a couple days. A little bit more, but that's, in terms of maybe it's not the most efficient way to work, but it wasn't that challenging of a way. It just took a little bit longer. But I don't know, in a way it had its benefits too, right? Like it gave me some time to just sit down for a few
Mm,
hours here and there or a couple times and work out some things, especially for something like this where going into this film, I think that you didn't have a firm idea of what you were looking for in terms of the music. And we spent a lot of time early on
yeah,
talking about
exactly.
artists and sending tracks back and forth of existing works and spec tracks. And very quickly, I think it came out that the things that you really gravitated towards were the more percussive, rhythmic types
Hmm.
of musical works. And you talked a lot about like Tom Waits and some of the more like electronic but organic electronic artists that are
Yeah.
sort of using things that sound familiar and
And what was your first kind of reaction when I started to settle in on that
oh,
aesthetic?
with Tom
That
Waits, it was like, well, who the fuck can sound like Tom Waits except for Tom Waits? It was like,
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll get right
please give
back to
me,
you.
please give me like maybe the most singular artist in the history of popular music, and
Well,
be
I,
like,
I
hey,
you
can
know
you
what?
sound like this person?
Well, you know what it was is because every film is different. Every film is totally different. And I think what was in my head, and maybe I should have said this to you back then, maybe I did. Again, my memory is shot already, is that you're right. I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted. And I think I wasn't sure. It was more than that. I think I was nervous about what I wanted just because, as you said already, Doug, that this was character driven. And there were a number of characters, and there are a number of brash, difficult, loud, obnoxious kind of interactions, and some really nice interactions as well. And so, and I hadn't done a film like that before, and so this notion of how do I treat this quote unquote, right? I was feeling a lot of pressure about how do I treat this? How do I treat my subjects? How do I treat the story? And so I was overwhelmed by the kind of the editing of it. And then all of a sudden, oh no, we need to put this other layer on it. Does that make sense? And so I
Hmm.
think I think for I showed you the trailer, right? And I felt like the trailer had a very whimsical. It's like, look at this.
Hmm.
Look at these people. What is going on here? And I felt like almost circusy, wasn't it?
Hmm.
Feel to the trailer. And I'll put all the links to all the stuff that we're talking about down in the comments below, in the section below, if you're interested, folks, including links to Doug's stuff as well. So I felt like. I felt like I needed to rethink, give myself maybe, as you're alluding to, a little bit of time. But then I also felt like I needed to be really clear with you about what it is that I wanted. So I think because of that, because we were at a distance, I probably gave you one or two things. You went and ran with them, came back a day or two later, and then we'd listen to them, and I'd be like, maybe not. Maybe that doesn't work. And so
Hmm.
for me, I think because of where I was at, I felt like if we would have been next to each other and you would have got the fingers rolling over the keyboards, I would have been like, yeah, that only more that, or that
Hmm.
only faster, only slower, louder, only, you know what I mean? And I felt like we could have, I could have settled on an aesthetic. This is all on me. This is not Doug at all. I just felt like that part of the process could have gone faster, and it was all because I hadn't settled on the aesthetic of the mood of the sound, so to speak. Does that
Yeah.
ring
No,
true a bit?
that's true, but I don't know. Not everything needs to go faster. And it's like you're right. It's like, having an 8 hour block of time where you and I were in the same room, I think we could have knocked out. It would have been different, right? I mean,
Mm.
it would have taken a different path. It would have
It
ended
totally
up,
would have been. It would have been different, right?
yeah.
And you're
But
right.
that's
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but that's fine. And I mean, as we were working it out, like a lot of it was sending along different demos. And like, I mean, I don't know, I was thinking maybe I'll just talk a little bit about like the progression because like, it took
Sure.
a long,
Go for
in
it.
the end, the score to this film is very understated and rhythmic. It's very sort of built around beats and percussion instruments and I mean the influence of it comes, I mean it's not very Tom Waits influence. It's actually more electronic music influence. Like a lot of my background and the way I assemble things is uses the language of electronic music because it just speaks to me in that way, and it is, electronic music, even when it is synthesizers and other things, is always very percussive and very rhythmic and
Yes.
repetitive and cyclical. And so, I mean, a lot of the way that the score was ended up was along that way, but it wasn't always that way. Early on, some of the things that I was experimenting with was I had just gotten a pedal steel guitar, one of my favorite instruments. I'm so excited to have it. But, working with that and like a very sort of room mic'd upright piano, our own piano that we have here,
Hmm.
which I love and I love playing, and trying to develop things that would maybe be a little more like focused on domesticity and like the home and these people and families and connection
Yeah.
and things like that. And it was totally the wrong vibe, but it was fun to develop. And then after that
So
was
did
work.
so so did you go through um each instrument to kind of foreground the layers of the composition that you work with? Because I feel like, yeah, I feel like you first worked with piano, and then there was a guitar, and then there was some more flutes and wind instruments before we got to where we ended.
Yeah, and
Is
a
is that fair?
kalimba.
Yeah.
I have there's a vintage kalimba that I had picked up. It was just like the little thumb piano that
Mm.
I had picked up at a junk shop a few years ago
You
and just
get
found
you
it on
were
a
I remember you being very excited about
yeah, I
that.
found it on a shelf and I started like building, songs around that and sampling it. And I think that work didn't end up making it to the final cut of the film, but it was the bridge between the sort of acoustic
You're
instruments,
right.
the sampling, the rhythmic, the tonal things where
You're
it's like
totally right.
metal, yeah, where it's like metal and wood banging together and makes a composition. And in the end, much of the music ended up being built around Ableton, this programming, the music software and digital
Hmm.
audio workstation, and using
Hmm.
different instruments in that and plugins and sequencing things differently. But it all came from, wood and metal and thumbs playing instruments and uh, guitars and acoustic instruments. And the bridge from one to the next was surprising, but I'm glad it ended up where it ended, especially because
No,
I think
that's
it,
that's
it suits the
that's a really
film
great
well.
way of putting it. What there was that bridge moment, wasn't there? And I think it created a space between you and I, created another language between you and I. Um, and I think it also took the music, it took the pressure off the music. Not, I talked before about the pressure on me, but that's not what I mean. It made it softer. I feel
Hmm.
like we entered into this other collaborative phase where it became softer, and then that opened up a conversation about rhythm and pacing, which is where I always want to be, uh,
Hmm.
which was where I feel comfortable, right? As an artist, is understanding and being able to communicate about mood and pacing. And I think that bridge somehow, I don't know how, you probably do, got us to that conversation, which I think we finished like, I don't know, like what, 3 weeks later or something after that. No, 3, 4 weeks later. At least the
Yeah.
first set of, at least not so much the arrangement and the mix, but we certainly kind of settled on the genre, the type of music that was eventually going to make it to the film. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think it took a long time to get there because it's a little bit of a challenging film to score. It's not a short and it's not a full length. It's,
Yeah.
somewhere in between at 33 minutes. It's a very talky film. I mean, this is a character study of, 8 to 12 people, but really focused on about five or six.
Mm.
And the interactions they have and how that tells us something interesting about our moment in time and politics and gender and representation and nation and all these different things. But there's a lot of characters in the film, and it's a talky film, right? There's almost no section of this film where nobody is talking.
There's no
So early
music
on,
video. Yeah.
yeah,
There's
well,
no
and
music video. Yeah.
yeah, right. And at one point, we had developed that, each of the characters would get their own little musical sort of like sentence where they would, it would be Mazzy's character would get this little
Ringtone.
melody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
exactly, exactly. For what's a ringtone?
Well, like a customized ringtone, you know
Yeah,
how
no,
you
no, I'm
can
just
custom.
teasing. But it's like, yeah, it is like, but it's true. It's like each one would get that. And one of the things that we found, like after, developing this whole score, which again was very valuable in taking this next step, is it was too busy. I mean, it's just,
Way
these,
too busy.
yeah,
Yeah.
when you have characters that you're jumping back and forth every, 10 to 30 seconds, it's very difficult. It was very jarring and it was distracting rather than building, which, when you're scoring a film, you are complementing all the other stuff that's happening in a film like this one. You're complementing the stuff that's happening on screen and what people are saying and the dialogue and the characters and the story and all of those things. And I think when we had, 10 or 11 different like little motifs, like they were cool, but it was so distracting. Like I
It
couldn't
was
just,
overwhelming.
it was
Yeah,
overwhelming. That's the
it
right
was
word.
overwhelming. And you're
So I
right.
think,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think as we got further into this project, like many projects, I think that we found ourselves simplifying and simplifying and simplifying and simplifying. And I think that the score is the better for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there was that horrible kind of, line about how, you don't want to notice the music in the film.
Hmm.
But there is something to that, but at the same time, it doesn't capture it, does it? And you're right. There is how do you how do you layer music on top of very sharp exchanges, fast exchanges? Like there are very few moments where people stop. I guess this
Hmm.
is a big thing in the film and say, hang on, let me think about that.
Hmm.
Dead silence.
Well, it's
Insert contemplative tune. You know
yeah.
what I mean? Or maybe if someone would have broke down and started crying on the show or something, then we could. I don't know. But that's not what it was. You're right. It was really difficult, wasn't it, to kind
No,
of
this is
have
a 30-minute film about people yelling at each other, and they yelled at each other for 30 minutes. These are like, I mean, I don't, this is my opinion as, not yours, but it's
no,
like,
no, you're
like
no, you're right.
these are obnoxious people. Like, I don't like most of the people in here on principle or in practice. And
Sure.
it's, I mean, it's like, but I think they have an interesting story to tell. And I think the way that you tell the story, like, builds empathy and reminded me as I was spent a lot of time with this film that's like, everybody has feelings, everybody has a background, everybody has fears and goals and all these things. And I think that there's lessons to take away from this story that
Mm,
gets told in this thing. But earlier on, in terms of the score, when I was making it a little more present, like, recording on my piano in my living room with just a room mic. So it was like a lot of the sound of the room and me shifting on the bench and like building those sounds into the composition that's like, let's not have this be a clean, clinical studio recording of a Steinway grand. Let's have it be the living room. And, I mean, I think that would be an interesting take for some films, but it totally didn't work for this one, where it's like you don't need anything that's drawing that kind of attention when you have 30 minutes of people
no.
just talking. And again, it's about
Yeah.
podcasters. There's modern podcasting doesn't allow for moments of reflection. It's about hot takes and yelling and controversy and yelling. And did I mention the yelling?
And more
And so
yelling.
it's
But
like,
that's a really interesting point. You didn't mention this to me before. Like I said, we haven't had a chance to really debrief. But so what you're saying is that the your reaction, your emotional reaction to the characters and what you were seeing on screen, and the yelling and the yelling and the more yelling, that did you have to work against that to try to score the film? Meaning, did you have to take that into consideration that you didn't want to kind of put your necessarily your feelings or your antipathy to what you're seeing or the characters in the film into the film itself, into the score itself? Does that make sense?
yeah, I understand what you're saying, but no,
Yeah.
I never thought about it that way.
Okay.
I don't like almost anybody in this film in terms
Okay.
of how they're represented on film. I think most people, many of the people in this film, even when there's an empathy for them, I don't feel like I want to go and like hang out with them or spend time with them. And that's me, right? That's me. But it's like I think that the story is about empathy and understanding of people that may be different from you or have made different choices than you or live a different experience than you. And I'm talking about me in particular as an
Yeah.
audience member in this very, human film where people are talking about their past and their lives and things that went well and things that didn't and where they're at and politics and economics and all these different things. And it's like as a musician scoring this, I didn't try to have my feelings go
Represented.
into it. I'm not even sure how I would do that in the first place. It was more just trying to build something that's like, how does the story get better through the music? How does the film get better through
Well,
the music? How does it get more trajectory? And I think what we came up with was a little more faster paced, faster tempo, rhythmic thing
mhm,
that helps augment the tension and controversy
true.
of the film while moving it
True.
forward.
And maybe we can move over to the kind of the mix because you're right. I feel like I was inserting myself more at the end saying we need to put more emphasis on this mood or this exchange or this
Hmm.
editing cut. Maybe it's because I'm more tuned to the cinematic editing because I've been involved in this obviously for over 12 months. But I think at the beginning you were talking a lot about the different layering we could do at the end of the film when not to give it away too much for if people haven't seen it. But layering the voices on top of each other, and we had a really interesting conversation about that. But I feel like when it came to those almost sound effect kind of moments, I feel like it was me that was coming in saying, "Hey, Doug, can we let's do this?" Or when we were making the fine tuning, I was like, "No, it doesn't hit enough there. We don't hear that sound. We don't hear the screech. We don't feel the screech. We don't want to move along." Does that make sense? Whereas I think um, most of the work that you were coming to the table to in terms of changing things or around the rhythm and the pacing and the music itself. So
Yeah,
does that
totally.
sound
And
right?
there's three or four moments. A lot of the film is a switch back and forth between these sort of escalating intense moments for two or
Mm,
3 minutes and then a beat. And then escalation, 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 and a beat. And composing for those escalations and those beats represents different challenges. I mean, it's basically a film that takes place over 48 hours, the day before and after Trump's
yeah,
election.
yeah,
And as you see, the story that I see in this film is like, especially in day two after Trump's election, which is a year ago at this point, and from us recording this podcast over a year, and you see the tensions of the world echoed in the tensions of this little small community
yeah.
of people that are built on arguing and built on fighting and built on playfulness and less playfulness and debate and all these things. But ultimately, I think there is a connection between these people. They keep coming back, many of them, they keep coming back to this
Yes.
community, which says something about, like what they're getting out of it and why they're doing it. But I think that composing for the last 5 minutes was the most fun part of this, and doing the sound design as well. As you're
Mm,
watching the community spiral, as you're watching Rachel sort of look at this thing that's happening in her life and going, what is happening? I mean, I don't know if that's how she feels in the end, because I think the film leaves it somewhat ambiguous of where it goes and what happens next. And I'm not sure if Rachel herself even knows where she went, but at least in terms of the story of the film, the day of Rachel getting what she wanted, Trump's victory, turns into this sort of dystopian nightmare amongst the
yeah,
people that give Rachel a lot of meaning in her life,
yeah,
like the people that are
yeah.
her audience.
There isn't any. I remember saying to you that the kind of party's over, right?
Hmm.
There's no celebration after when one of the main characters leaves, like
Yeah.
comes up on screen and kind of says, you know, I've had enough of this, and Trump is, I'm not okay with Trump and this, that, and the other, and goodbye. You
And
know,
Rachel got, and Rachel, and I think there's an interesting part of the story there that's,
mm,
a very old story, but still works today because it's so true, which is like, be careful what you wish for. Like,
mm,
you might get the thing that you want in one part of your life, and it has great costs that bring you a lot of pain. I mean, Sue and Rachel both talk about how
yeah, it costs. Yeah,
the bad
yeah,
days are when somebody gets their feelings like really sincerely hurt. And I thought that was a nice moment of empathy in the film for
mm,
these people that are about going in and poking the hornet's nest and stirring
yeah,
up controversy, that they also do have like a line, and they genuinely do care about the people, even and recognize that like they've got their own lines that they cross
hmm
regularly in this
hmm
film. But
So you brought,
scoring for this
yeah.
was fun, especially in the last couple of minutes as things really go off the rails. And early versions of this had a little bit more intensity, sort of leading into more of a beat and more of a moment of reflection that was a little more gentle. But I think in the end that didn't work. I think it's just
No, it
intensity,
didn't.
intensity, intensity, and it's over. And I think that was the right
Yeah,
decision.
yeah, yeah. Agreed. So listen, let's talk about takeaways. As you alluded to already, Doug, how many files did you send me? I'm gonna say you sent me at least oh geez, 20, 25, 30 short
Hmm.
clips, things that you just developed on the fly and said, how about this one? How about that one? Um, what are you gonna do next? Were some of those little jigs that you put together, if that's the right word, were they helpful for other projects you're doing, or are you thinking about scoring other films? Like, what's next for you?
Yeah, well, next is I'm doing more work with art galleries and museums. I'm going to be doing some work with the Junos, which I'm very excited about, which will be coming up
Ah,
in March, and that should be fun. I'm doing more curation, and I'm excited about that as well. But in terms of the musical stuff, I'm working on my next record, which I'm thrilled to be diving back into music after taking a year where I didn't spend a whole lot of time thinking about like releasing music for just regular listening and working more in the art realm. It's been a very rewarding year, and I'm going to keep doing that. But I'm also very
so
excited to be taking a few weeks and diving back into making a record, which
so
hopefully will be coming out next summer.
will this film have any impact on that next record at all? I'm gonna leave that purposely open-ended.
I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so in terms of like the question I think you're asking is, did the work that I developed as demos for this film, will it make it into?
Or even the process that we went through,
Yeah,
and any part of the, yeah.
yeah, and the answer is no. Like the demos that I developed aren't going onto this record. They'll be useful in some future moment. And I have a large library of things that are exactly this, like small demos or things that were developed for one thing that make their way into another, sometimes years down the road. But the process was extremely valuable. Not only, I think I take something away from every project that I do, especially when it's involving other people. Being a solo musician, a lot of the work that you do is very autonomous. And I mean that in the best way. I like working that way. It's like there's something nice about not having to worry about, commercial success or something like that. Like I'm not that kind of musician and I couldn't be if I even wanted to. And I'm not interested in that, but it's like, like
I don't
working.
think you need to worry about
Yeah,
commercial success
I'm
with this
not
film.
worried. Yeah. But it's like, but in all seriousness, it's like collaborating with other folks changes you out of your, or, it takes you out of your comfort zone. It changes your process and teaches you new ways of doing things. I learned a lot of new technology in this. I got a lot better in
Mm.
learning some, when it's just you, it's very easy to go to the processes and technologies and ways of doing things that you're already very comfortable with. But when you're having to work in collaborating with other people, you have to learn some new ways of doing things. And like
Hmm.
in this instance, I learned a lot about like using Ableton and more advanced features in that software platform, which I like a lot, but isn't the one that I normally use. And like being able
Yeah.
to, build new instruments and build new rhythms and ways of doing things. Like I took away a lot of professional skill that is
Hmm.
going into these next records, learning about getting better at or getting more creative at learning about sampling. I used a lot of like old samplers, which I find really inspiring, and they were built into earlier works that we did on this project of like sampling kalimba, sampling the pedal steel guitar through, old 1990s or 2000s samplers.
Hmm.
And there's something I like working with acoustic instruments, and I like working with hardware and then moving to software. And I
Okay.
think that I learned a lot of new ways of doing things that are informing whatever comes next.
Yeah. I feel like, well, you met one of my collaborators on my last film, The Canadian Delegation, and it's interesting because the it was a group. It was three guys in a group called Derwatt, Derwatt. So it was a completely different experience because I gave them the film and they went off and they collaborated amongst themselves and they kind
Hmm.
of banged heads and had great moments and so I feel like I'm totally missed out on that whole process of of collaborating on making the music. So then when you and I got together, it was like, oh, it's just the pair of us, right? There's no there's no escape, right? It's just we both need to figure out we both need to come to some agreement and figure out how we're each working and then focusing in on the work itself and whether or not we both feel it's working and capturing um or amplifying the story, right? So it's completely different and in retrospect, it would have been great to have worked with you one-on-one before working with a team of people. Do you know what I mean? Just because I feel like you and I learned a lot. I learned a tremendous amount of things because it was a smaller collaboration, I guess.
Hmm.
That makes sense, you know?
Totally. Yeah. And
Yeah,
that's part of learning to work with people is like,
for sure.
navigating vibes and processes and how you do it. And it was fun though. I had a great time.
Cool. Doug, what's your where can people go to check out your music? You've got a
Oh
few
yeah,
albums.
yeah. Everything's at douglas.tewksbury.com.
Okay,
Online, socials as well. Instagram is the only social media
it's the
that I'm
place to
using these
go.
days.
Okay.
But yeah, just web search, Bandcamp, Spotify, Apple Music, whatever. And
And
of course, this
you
film.
are you playing live anytime soon?
Nope, not doing anything live. Very, very comfortable staying in and finishing up this next record.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Doug.
Totally. I'm
But
so
what
glad we
he
could do
didn't
this.
hear a who, he heard whoever said they knew a sitcom copy when they saw one. And with money comes temptation. So he gave them all.